Have you ever found yourself standing alone in a darkened bathroom, staring at your reflection, daring yourself to whisper a forbidden name? Your rational mind tells you nothing will happen, but your heart pounds anyway. Your hand hovers near the light switch, ready to flood the room with safety at the first sign of movement in the glass. This is the power of urban legends, and few are more compelling than the tale of Candyman. Say his name 5 times while looking in a mirror, and he will appear behind you. A figure with a hook for a hand, covered in bees, seeking vengeance on those who dare summon him. It's a legend that has terrified generations, spawned a horror franchise, and continues to be whispered at sleepovers and late-night gatherings. But what makes this particular legend so enduring? Why do mirrors and incantations hold such power over our psyche? And what really happens when you complete the ritual? Today, we're going beyond the jump scares to explore the fascinating intersection of folklore, psychology, social commentary, and genuine terror that makes Candyman one of the most sophisticated urban legends in modern culture. From Liverpool to Chicago, the literary birth of a legend most people know. Candyman, from the 1992 film that became an instant horror classic. But the character's origins lie in literature, specifically in a short story called The Forbidden by Clive Barker. The British author, renowned for his ability to blend visceral horror with profound philosophical themes. Here's where the story gets interesting. Barker's original tale wasn't set in America at all. The Forbidden took place in the bleak council estates of Liverpool, England, during the Thatcher era. The setting was crucial to Barker's vision. He was exploring how legends grow in communities that society has forgotten, in places where neglect and despair create fertile ground for dark stories to take root. The Candyman in Barker's story was described quite differently from the cinematic version we know today. His appearance was more deteriorated, almost jaundiced, suggesting a figure that had been literally rotting in the collective unconscious of a forgotten community. But even in this original form, the essential elements were present: the summoning through repetition of his name, the mirror as a portal, and the deadly consequences for those who disturbed him. When director Bernard Rose decided to adapt Barker's story for the screen, he made a decision that would transform Candyman from a compelling ghost story into something far more powerful and relevant to American audiences. He relocated the narrative to Cabrini Green, one of Chicago's most notorious public housing projects. The real horror, a legend built on historical trauma. This wasn't just a change of scenery for convenience or atmosphere. It was a brilliant stroke that grounded supernatural horror in the very real horrors of American history and systemic racism. Rose and the film's star, Tony Todd, created a complete backstory for Candyman that the original story had only hinted at. His name in life was Daniel Robertale, the son of an enslaved person who, through exceptional talent and circumstances, became a sought-after portrait artist in the late 19th century. He moved in wealthy circles, his artistic gifts opening doors that would normally be locked to a black man in post-Civil War America. His transformation into Candyman came through an act of profound injustice. Robertale fell in love with a wealthy white woman whose portrait he had been commissioned to paint. The feeling was mutual, and she became pregnant with his child. When her father discovered the relationship, he assembled a lynch mob. What they did to Daniel Robertale was designed not just to kill him, but to humiliate and dehumanize him in the most brutal way possible. They sawed off his right hand and replaced it with a rusty hook from a meatpacking plant. They smeared his body with honeycomb stolen from nearby apiaries, then released swarms of bees on him, as he died from countless stings, swelling and suffocating. The mob chanted his new name, Candyman, a mockery of the sweet honey that was killing him. Finally, they burned his body on a pyre. The location where they committed this murder would eventually become the site of Cabrini-Green Dot. This backstory elevates Candyman beyond typical slasher film territory. He isn't just a monster who kills because it's what monsters do. He's a victim of racial violence who has become a manifestation of unresolved historical trauma. His very existence as a legend is a form of justice. Denied, he cannot rest, because the crime against him was never acknowledged, never punished, never even properly remembered except as a ghost story. When people in Cabrini Green tell his story and say his name, they're not just sharing a scary tale. They're keeping alive the memory of real violence, real injustice, real suffering that society would prefer to forget. The legend becomes a form of oral history, a way of saying, this happened here. We will not let you pave over this with silence. This is what transforms Candyman into something rare in horror cinema, a monster you can fear and, simultaneously, grieve for. His rage is terrible, but it's also understandable. He was murdered for the crime of being human, for daring to love and be loved. That his spirit seeks vengeance is horrifying. Yes, but what was done to him was perhaps even more so, the psychology of summoning. Why repetition and mirrors terrify us? Now we arrive at the mechanics of the legend itself. Why 5 times? Why a mirror? These aren't arbitrary choices. They tap into deep, psychological and cultural currents that make the ritual genuinely unsettling, even for skeptics. Let's start with the repetition. Saying a name 5 times isn't unique to the Candyman legend. Similar rituals appear in folklore worldwide: Bloody Mary, Hanako-san in Japan, various other mirror-based. The number might vary 3 times, 13 times, 100 times, but the principle remains the same. Repetition has power. This isn't superstition. It's psychology. The act of repeating an incantation is a form of self-hypnosis. Each repetition builds tension and focuses your attention. Your heart rate increases with each utterance. Your breathing becomes more shallow. You're putting yourself into an altered state of consciousness, priming your brain to experience something unusual. Think about it. You're typically alone, in a dark or dimly lit room, staring at your own reflection. You're deliberately engaging in an activity that you've been told is dangerous. Your rational mind might not believe in ghosts, but your primitive brain, the part that evolved to keep you alive by recognizing threats, is on high alert. Every sound becomes amplified. Every shadow becomes suspicious. You're essentially activating your own fear response through a ritualized behavior. The specific choice of 5 repetitions is psychologically clever. It's enough to build serious tension, but not so many that the ritual becomes tedious or loses its impact. By the time you're saying Candyman for the 4th time, your anxiety is peaking. That 5th utterance becomes almost unbearable. Will you actually say it? Can you say it? The anticipation is often more terrifying than any actual outcome. The mirror, portal, trap, or window to the mind. Now let's talk about mirrors, because this is where things get genuinely fascinating from a psychological perspective. Mirrors have been associated with the supernatural across cultures for millennia. Ancient Romans believed mirrors could capture souls. Jewish tradition covers mirrors in a house of mourning, partly from a belief that mirrors could trap the soul of the deceased. Chinese feng shui teaches that mirrors in bedrooms can invite harmful spirits or cause unsettled sleep. In European folklore, Breaking a mirror brings 7 years of bad luck because it damages your reflected soul. Why are mirrors so universally unsettling? Part of it is their uncanny nature. A mirror shows you yourself, but reversed. It's you, but not quite you. It's a perfect copy that nonetheless exists in a space you cannot enter. Philosophically, mirrors challenge our understanding of reality and identity. Which is the real youth? One in the mirror or the one looking at it? But there's also a documented neurological phenomenon that explains why staring into a mirror in low light can become genuinely disturbing, even without any belief in the supernatural. It's called the Troxler effect, and it's a fascinating glitch in how our brains process visual information. Here's how it works. Our visual system is designed to detect changes in motion. Constant, unchanging stimuli tend to fade from our perception because our brains decide they're not important enough to keep processing consciously. When you stare at your face in a dimly lit mirror without moving your eyes, your brain starts to adapt to the static image. The low lighting means there's less visual information to work with, so your brain has to fill in gaps. What happens next can be genuinely disturbing. Your face begins to seem distorted. Features might appear to shift, melt, or morph. You might see your face aging rapidly or changing into someone else's face entirely. Some people report seeing monstrous or demonic features appear. Colors can shift. Skin might look greenish, grayish, or unnaturally pale. In some cases, people report that their reflection appears to be someone or something else entirely. This isn't supernatural, but it is genuinely unnerving. You're experiencing what's essentially a mild hallucination caused by sensory deprivation combined with expectation. Your brain is trying to make sense of incomplete information, and in the absence of clear data, it creates patterns often disturbing ones. This phenomenon has been studied scientifically. Researcher Giovanni Caputo conducted experiments where subjects stared at their own reflections in low light for extended periods. Within less than a minute, 66% of participants reported seeing distortions. After about 10 minutes, many described seeing monstrous beings, deformed faces, animals, or fantastical creatures. Now combine this neurological quirk with the Candyman ritual. You're already in a heightened state of anxiety from the repetitive incantation. Your brain expects to see something terrifying because that's what the legend promises. The Troxler effect kicks in, your face distorts in the mirror, and suddenly what your rational mind knows is an optical illusion becomes, in that moment, terrifyingly real. You've created the perfect conditions for a self-fulfilling prophecy of fear. What really happens when you say his name? So here's the question that brought many of us to this legend in the first place. What actually happens if you do it? I'm not going to encourage anyone to try it, but let's be honest, many of us already have. Usually as teenagers at sleepovers, or as young adults testing our courage. The typical experience goes something like this. You stand in front of the bathroom mirror. Maybe you're alone, or maybe friends are just outside the door, listening. You turn off the lights, leaving perhaps a small night light or light from under the door enough to see your reflection, but not enough to feel safe. Your heart is already pounding. You start Candyman. Your voice sounds strange in the enclosed space, both too loud and too quiet. Candyman, your reflection stares back at you. Is it your imagination, or does it look different somehow? On demand, the room feels colder. Every small sound, the hum of the ventilation, the house settling, distant traffic seems amplified and ominous. Candyman, this is the moment of truth. One more and you'll have completed the ritual. Your hand hovers near the light switch. Your breath is shallow. You're terrified, but you're also thrilled. This is why you're doing this. Most people never say it the fifth time. They chicken out, laugh nervously, flip on the lights, and bask in the relief of having escaped. Others do complete it, heart hammering, and then ... Nothing, or rather, nothing objectively supernatural happens, but subjectively. Subjectively, something does happen. You might see your face distort in the mirror, that Troxler effect we discussed. You might hear a sound that, in your heightened state, becomes something supernatural. You might feel a presence behind you, the primitive part of your brain screaming that you're being watched. Some people run from the room. Others stand frozen, unable to move, experiencing what feels like genuine terror even though no hook-handed figure has appeared. The social function of urban legends. This brings us to an important question. If the supernatural aspect isn't real, why do these legends persist? Why do we keep telling these stories? And, more importantly, why do we keep believing them enough to be frightened? The answer lies in understanding urban legends as a form of modern folklore. They serve important social and psychological functions. First, they provide a safe way to explore fear. Humans are naturally curious about danger, but we also want to avoid actual harm. Urban legends let us experience fear in a controlled environment. You're scared, your body is reacting as if you're in danger, but you're actually safe in your bathroom or your friend's house. It's similar to the appeal of horror movies or roller coasters, the thrill of fear without the risk. Second, legends like Candyman become bonding experiences. Everyone who has tried the ritual, or even just discussed it, shares a connection. It's a rite of passage, particularly for adolescents, testing boundaries and establishing their courage. The story of the time you almost said Candyman's name 5 times becomes part of your personal mythology. Third, and this is especially true for Candyman, these legends can encode real social commentary and historical memory. The film's screenwriter, Bernard Rose, and its star, Tony Todd, deliberately created a story that would force audiences to confront uncomfortable truths about racism and violence in America. In the film, one character tells the graduate student investigating the legend, "Candyman is how we deal with the everyday." For the residents of Cabrini Green, the legend serves a purpose. It names the fear they live with constantly. It gives form to the very real dangers of their environment: poverty, violence, neglect, systemic racism. By personifying these threats as a supernatural entity, the legend makes them something that can be discussed, understood, and in some small way, controlled. The legend also keeps alive a memory that mainstream history tends to forget. Daniel Robert Tale's fictional murder represents countless real acts of racial violence that America has never properly acknowledged or addressed. Every time someone says Candyman, they're speaking the name of those who were never remembered, never mourned, never given justice. The 2021 sequel, expanding the legend. The 2021 film, Candyman, directed by Nia DaCosta and produced and co-written by Jordan Peele, explicitly engaged with these themes. Rather than simply remaking the original, it asked, what does this legend mean in contemporary America? How does trauma echo through generations? Who gets to tell these stories? The new film revealed that Daniel Robital wasn't the only Candyman. The legend had attached itself to multiple victims of violence, specifically black men killed by racism and police brutality. Each became part of the collective Candyman, summoned by saying the name. The hook-handed figure in the mirror is all of them. Every victim whose death was forgotten or dismissed. This expanded the legend in a powerful way. It acknowledged that Candyman isn't just about one historical injustice, but about ongoing patterns of violence and dehumanization. The 2021 film directly references real incidents including the murder of Emmett Till and contemporary police shootings, making explicit what the 1992 film had implied, that horror movies can be about more than just making audiences jump. The enduring power of beliefs. We return to our original question with a more complete understanding. What happens when you say Candyman's name 5 times in a mirror? Objectively, nothing supernatural occurs. No ghostly figure with a hook will materialize behind you. No swarm of bees will fill the room. You won't be murdered by a vengeful spirit. But subjectively, something profound does happen. You participate in a ritual that connects you to everyone who has ever performed it. You experience the power of belief to shape perception, how expectation and fear can make your own reflection seem monstrous. You engage with a story that carries within it real history, real pain, and real questions about justice and memory. The real horror of Candyman isn't that he might appear in your mirror. The real horror is why he exists in the first place. Daniel Robitel was murdered for the crime of being human, for daring to love across racial boundaries that a racist society had declared inviolable. His legend persists because the injustice that created him has never been fully acknowledged or rectified. When you stand in front of that mirror and whisper his name, you're not just telling a ghost story. You're acknowledging that some wounds are too deep to heal, that some crimes are too terrible to forget, that some ghosts refuse to rest until we confront the truths they represent. The mirror shows us ourselves, perhaps. The most unsettling truth about the Candyman legend is this. The figure you fear appearing in the mirror is ultimately a reflection of our collective guilt and failure. Candyman exists because we live in a society that created him, that committed the violence against Daniel Robitel and countless real victims, that built the neglected projects where the legend thrived, that continues to grapple with the legacy of racism and brutality. When you stare into that mirror and see something shift in the shadows, what you're really seeing is a ghost of our own making. Not a supernatural entity, but the specter of historical injustice that we've never properly addressed. The legend endures because the problems it represents endure. This is what makes Candyman more sophisticated than most urban legends. It functions on multiple levels simultaneously. For those seeking a simple scare, it delivers the ritual is genuinely unnerving, and the films provide effective horror. For those willing to look deeper, it offers profound social commentary about how we remember or fail to remember victims of violence, about how communities deal with trauma, about how legends preserve truths that official history tries to erase. A final warning, so should you try it. Should you stand in front of a mirror in the dark and say his name 5 times? I can't answer that for you. If you do, you probably won't summon a supernatural entity, but you will summon something your own fear, your capacity for belief, your connection to a larger cultural story. You'll experience the power of ritual and suggestion. You might see your face distort in unsettling ways. You'll certainly feel your heart race, and maybe, just maybe, you'll think about why this legend exists. You'll remember Daniel Robitel, a fictional character who represents countless real victims. You'll be reminded that some stories refuse to die because the truths they contain are too important to forget. The shadows in the mirror might just be tricks of light and psychology. But the ghosts of history, those are very, very real. They don't need mirrors to haunt us. They're always there, whether we acknowledge them or not. Candyman's power isn't that he'll kill you if you say his name. His power is that he makes you remember. He makes you confront. He makes you think about things society would rather you forget. And perhaps that's the most terrifying thing of all.